Welcome, welcome. Well, folks, it's been 5 days since Scott Boras and Pete Alonso made that bizarre contract exclusive offer to the New York Mets, and David Stearns and Steve Cohen still have not answered the Boras contract offer. What is the latest on that? And did Jim Duette just take a swipe at David Stearns? Very interesting. So, we're going to examine the latest in the Pete Alonso saga and the latest, I guess, latest news in that story because folks, it's very interesting when you think about it. I mean, it seems simple right now, but apparently it's not. Okay. Then let's talk about a very intriguing starting pitching option. Obviously, most of us know by now that Mr. Roki Sasaki seems to have left teams like the Mets and the Yankees at the altar, and it more than likely he's going to sign with either the Dodgers or the Padres. Where do the Mets go from here? Because in my opinion, and in the opinion of many Met fans, the Mets still need a lot of help in the pitching department. So we're going to examine a very interesting starting pitching candidate. And of course, let's examine that bullpen because we do have an opportunity to have a top bullpen. So I really think we should take advantage of that. All right, folks. As always, let's get this video started off right. Smash that like button. I appreciate each and every one of you, you passionate MLB fans, the great comments. You've been doing a good job helping out the video, so I cannot say thank you enough. This has been super, super fun this offseason. It's been a super, super interesting offseason as well. But, at the end of the day, the Mets got Juan Soto. That was extremely fun. I've never, witnessed something in my life. We've never acquired a free agent of that magnitude. So at the end of the day, that was good. But we have to remember the bar is World Series, folks. World Series. And especially when you hear Juan Soto in his press conference talk about dynasty. When the Mets were selling Mr. Juan Soto and his family, the Mets shared their plan with Juan Soto. And I'm sure, as good as Sean Manaea was, I don't think Sean Manaea was the key pickup. So there are still many more moves to come. And I always say this about a guy like David Stearns. He's like a fantasy baseball general manager. He's like playing fantasy baseball. He will never be done. And he's a guy that never sees a deadline. Opening day, is that a deadline? No, it's just opening day. It will be an opportunity to see the new acquisitions and how this team meshes. But David Stearns, even when the season starts, will be proactively working the phones, working the waiver wire, working the free agent, working the trade market, constantly trying to build this team. As we saw last year, how the team started was not how the team finished, especially in the bullpen. Okay, folks, so let's get to topic one. And topic one on the day, it has to go around Mr. Pete Alonso. And, the news, like I said, is kind of bizarre. It's just really bizarre. Scott Boras, put this whole situation in unprecedented territory by giving all the leverage to the New York Mets, saying, here, you take it. And I know it probably came from Pete. Pete seems like, he wants to go back to the New York Mets, but it's tough because he has no market. And a guy like David Stearns is like, this guy's giving me all the leverage, and Pete Alonso has no market. Why am I going to bid against myself? Why am I even going to pay the 3 years, $90 million? All right. And I know a lot of Mets fans are saying, Hey, give him the long-term deal. Give him the 3 years at 30 million an average annual salary. I mean, honestly, at this point right now, make the guy happy. Make the guy happy. He's probably going to opt out next year anyway. So if you have to give him $30 million for 1 year and, a couple opt outs, 30 years in year 2, 30 years in year 3, he's probably 90% going to opt out after this year. The problem he's having is he has a qualifying offer attached to him, which means any team that signs him has to give up draft picks. So he is having a hell of a time getting any offers. So the Mets know this. David Stearns knows this, and he is in a heck of a situation. So let's get into what Mr. Jim Duette, former Met GM, said about his, contemporary or, well, he's not a colleague, but a guy who now sits in a position that Jim Duette held, and that is, well, Jim Duette was never president, but he had those general manager responsibilities. So let's get into what Jim Duette said, and let me get you the exact quotes. Okay. So this is very funny. So this is what the title of the article is titled, and it goes, Steve Cohen may need to intervene in Mets Pete Alonso pursuit per insider. All right, so listen to this, folks. Listen to this, and then let's unpack it together, and you tell me what you think about this. Okay, so obviously, no secret, the Mets and Pete Alonso should be in the final stretch. The Mets want Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso wants the Mets. They have the framework. They agree on the years. I mean, everything, check mark. Like, what the hell is holding things up? Okay, so we initially had to hang up because of the years. All right, Alonso, Boris came to realization that they're not going to get those years. All right. So Jim Duette made an appearance yesterday. So today's January 15th, yesterday on Foul Territory, and he basically said right now the Mets and Pete Alonso are in a stare down. Okay. And the questions were really asked, why are they in a stare down? Right now, obviously, we know Pete Alonso has no suitors. And, but the thing is, at the same token, the Mets are the only suitor, and Duette says he would really be surprised if Pete isn't back with the Mets. So he goes like this. This is where he gives Stearns a compliment, but he also slaps him in the face. He goes, I think David Stearns is one of the brightest presidents of baseball operations in the game. And he realizes he doesn't have to bid against himself. There aren't a lot of suitors that it would seem Pete wants to play for. But then he goes on to say, in quotations, I think Steve Cohen might have to eventually jump in on this one, Duette continued. I think that's why it has been held up at this point, and until Steve Cohen gets in, it may be still held up. Okay, folks, let's go over that. Basically, he says he's one of the brightest president of baseball operations in the game. Jim Duette says about David Stearns, then goes on to say, for this deal to get done, David Stearns' boss has to jump in. Okay, whether you think David Stearns is doing a good job, there are many people that think he could do a lot better. He could be more aggressive. I'm not saying I'm one of those people that, don't have those thoughts, but the fact of the matter is, Jim Duette is basically saying for this to get done, David Stearns, who's supposedly one of the smartest guys in all of baseball, his boss has to step in. Well, folks, Juan Soto, that was a very complex contract that involved historic money. Yes, for that to get done, Steve Cohen had to get in. But this is a fairly simple contract, under $100 million. There is no reason that a guy like Steve Cohen has to get in. This is a simple contract. The fact that Jim Duette suggested that Steve Cohen would have to get involved in this negotiation basically is a shot at the ability of David Stearns. There's no reason. Can David Stearns communicate with Steve Cohen on back channels saying, "Hey, Steve, do you want to up the negotiations?" Or Steve can, negotiate, or Steve can talk to David Stearns on the back channel. No way. It's a horrible look for Steve Cohen to just jump in. He puts all his trust and everything in David Stearns and everything. And you know it. You could tell this is a David Stearns run offseason. If Steve Cohen was running this offseason, I promise you, it would look a lot different. Not that it would be better, but this is what a David Stearns run offseason looks like. It is very targeted. It's a guy who is very patient and a guy who looks for extreme value. Now, am I going to disagree with David Stearns? Maybe there were times where I think he could have got more aggressive, but at the end of the day, is there talent out there to be had? Yes, Pete Alonso. In the beginning of the offseason, I mentioned this several times. The thought process is that, on a fair contract, you would have to get him at a 5 or 6 year deal at around $160 million. And honestly, that was at a fair dollar value. There were thoughts that you would have to approach $200 million. So if David Stearns wasn't patient and he was desperate and he says, I signed Juan Soto, I must guarantee that I have that protection, then he would have gave Boras whatever he wanted. That would have been money approaching $200 million. That would have been an extra $100 million spent that he didn't have to. All right, check mark. We're probably still going to get Pete Alonso. Okay, who's out there? Bregman's still out there. Another guy who wanted $200 million. If Stearns wanted to, and he may pivot elsewhere, but if Stearns wanted to, he can acquire Bregman, who was looking for a 7 or 8 year deal. He could probably acquire Bregman at 4 years and a little over $100 million. So that guy will be gotten at a major discount. Other guys out there, Santander, a very talented hitter, hit 44 home runs last year. He's a guy who does have ability. He's a guy that probably was going to get a little over $100 million. Now you could probably get him on a 1 or 2 year deal, so you can get him on a value contract. So the list goes on and on. Then once the free agent market settles, the dust clears, then you can evaluate the trade market. But you know what, folks? There are a lot of free agents still available. So, that means the trade market isn't so hot, because why would a team give up assets if they can easily go sign a player? So, there are different levels to this offseason, different levels that David Stearns goes throughout a season. Right now, we are evaluating the free agents, evaluating the market. But I gotta say, am I happy with the slow, methodical approach? No, but at the end of the day, I can't really deny what he's doing. I can't say, hey, you're wrong, because we see example after example where he has the opportunity to get guys, and he may still get guys like Pete Alonso for far less money. But I'll tell you, in the future, there will be times where he may have to get more aggressive. Case in point, Teoscar Hernandez. If you wanted a Teoscar Hernandez, maybe he give him an extra $10 million, an extra year, you get a Teoscar Hernandez. If you were a bit more aggressive, he could have got that done. a Jock Peterson. If Jock Peterson was a guy he truly felt was that difference maker or that could make an impact on the Mets, if he sweetened the pot or gave an extra year, he could have got a Jock Peterson. But at the end of the day, I guess he felt a Hernandez or a Peterson, those guys were kind of replaceable, or you can get comparable talent later. Okay. So like I said, there is talent still out there and talent that you can get at a discounted price. Remember, drop your comment. If you disagree, let me know why. If you agree, let me know why. And this is the fun of it. This is why I love baseball offseason. I love MLB Hot Stove. This is the fun of it. Okay, so let's get into the pitching. And this is a guy that I think the Mets could really do a lot of positive work with in their pitching lab, and they can get this guy at a major, major discount as compared to if they would have tried signing him in the beginning of the offseason. And that man is named Mr. Jack Flaherty. Mr. Jack Flaherty. Now, Jack Flaherty is an extremely, extremely interesting guy. He's an extremely interesting guy. He's going to be 29, right? So he's a couple years younger than a Max Fried. He's a guy that you're not going to have to sign him for a long-term deal right now. You're not going to have to sign him for a long-term deal. He's come off of a very good year, 3.1 WAR, 13-7, 3.17 ERA. Pitched 162 innings. You saw him in the playoffs pitch some very good games. The guy has a very nasty, nasty breaking ball, that knuckle curve. One of the nastiest knuckle curveballs in the game, right? So, that is something you can work with. But then when you look at his career has been very solid. 2019 has been his best year. He was 11-8 with a 2.75 ERA, 0.968 whip. But, he's a guy that I think he has a lot of untapped potential. And I would love to get him in the pitching lab. And I would love for us to get him at a discounted price. Him compared to trading for Luis Castillo or Dylan Cease, I think if you untap his potential, he will be just as talented as a Luis Castillo. Plus, you don't have to give up the crazy packages. Dylan Cease, you would have to give up that crazy package, and you only have him for 1 year, and you would have to try to resign him for a ridiculous contract. And at the end of the day, if you work with Jack Flaherty, I don't think the difference is that great. So Jack Flaherty this past year, he has his highest strikeout rate since 2019, that magical year, and he has his lowest walk rate. So his career is going in an upward trend. I mean, with the Dodgers, he did great. With the Detroit Tigers, he did great. And I love to see what Jeremy Hefner can unlock. I mean, if you go to Jack Flaherty's Baseball Savant, he's got pretty good numbers. In fact, if you look at his advanced statistics and you compare him with Sean Manaea, I'd say Jack Flaherty last year looked much better. Much better. I mean, Jack Flaherty's breaking run value is in the 98th percentile. His whiff percentage, 91st percentile. His K percentage, 90th percentile. His base on ball percentage, 83rd percentile. And those are stats you like to see. And then he's got other stats that are way above league average. Expected ERA, 70th percentile. Chase rate, 72nd percentile. Hard hit percentage, 74th percentile. Extension, 67th percentile. Right off the bat, I look at his repertoire and how he's using his pitches. He has a four-seam fastball, a slider, a curve, a change, a sinker. I already told you his curve is elite. His curve is elite. It's more of a knuckle curve, but he uses his curve 21% of the time and his four-seam 43% of the time. One of the things that he has, but it's not really of high quality, is his sinker. His sinker, he only uses 2% of the time, and his ground ball percentage is only in the 38th percentile. I could see that being another untapped weapon. He's got strikeout potential, yet he's not a fastball guy. He doesn't throw heavy fastball. He doesn't throw with great velocity. He only throws 93.2 miles per hour, so he can strike you out. He's got great movement. That's what that tells you. Yet he doesn't have to blow you away. He's got great control. I like that. And the untapped potential in the ground ball percentage and the sinker. Sinker, he only uses 2% of the time. Kind of reminds me of a Sean Manaea. If you look at Sean Manaea's 2023 stats, Sean Manaea only used his sinker 1% of the time. Then the Mets work with him, and in 2024, he uses his sinker 43% of the time, getting more ground balls, throwing less pitches, getting out of innings. That is something Jack Flaherty can add onto his repertoire and improve. Jack Flaherty, he's a guy with untapped potential. He's a guy, I think you can get him at a great value price. That is a guy I would highly explore. And if you do get a Jack Flaherty on a 3-year deal, then the New York Mets rotation, a rotation that, we've actually been kind of worried about. And I'm not saying the rotation would be, light years ahead, great or anything like that. But the fact of the matter is we wouldn't have to worry about rebuilding our rotation into next year. We would have a little consistency. Senga, we have him locked up for a 3-year contract. Clay Holmes, we have him here for the next 2 years. Sean Manaea, we would have here for the next 3 years. McGill's here for another 2 years. Peterson's here for another 2 years, or one of them might be here for 3 years. But those guys are on multi-year deals. Jack Flaherty, if he signs that multi-year deal, your pitching staff would have a lot more consistency. And then you bring up the guys like Brandon Sproat. If he's anything, if he makes any type of noise, that would be such good help. And last but not least, of course, you got guys like Frankie Montas, Blackburn, Griffin Canning. The Mets have a lot of depth. Obviously, you want them to improve that upper echelon talent. And Jack Flaherty, I think he's going to be a value guy with a lot of potential. Okay, that brings us back to the bullpen, and I'm going to say this ad nauseum. You already have an elite closer. You want to have an elite bullpen. Shortening games is going to be key. I'm going to assume that the offense is going to be a lot better. The offense last year was good. You add Juan Soto, you add another bat in addition to Pete Alonso, and then with the improvements of Mark Vientos growing, Francisco Alvarez not being hurt, and guys like Ronnie Mauricio contributing, the lineup should be even better, not, also Acuna. So I'm excited to see that. But again, you need to shorten games. Diaz for the 9th, Tanner Scott, you need that elite 8th inning guy. The Mets, money shouldn't be an option. You see the Dodgers, after going after everybody and their mother, they're interested in Tanner Scott because they know how much of an impact guy he is. You do that. Then you don't stop there. Then, a guy who I was trying to mention the other day, I just didn't write him down. He slipped my mind. But Kenley Jansen, he's going to be 37 years old, but he's a guy that still has a lot left in the tank. If you don't get him, there's a lot of talent left on the free agent market. Guys like Carlos Estevez, as of this recording, they have not signed. But, there's still a lot of talented guys there. Former Mets, Brooks Raley, Phil Maton. I'm not so high on that. That would be like a last signing, but a lot of people like Phil Maton. You got Ryan Stanek still available. You got Drew Smith. But if you look at the bullpen guys available, there's like 60, 70 guys. The list goes on and on and on. I'm looking at it right now. Kenley Jansen, Carlos Estevez, Danny Colum. I always mispronounce his name. Kirby Yates. AJ Minter, Craig Kimbrell, Buck Farmer. I mean, the list really goes on and on. Yes, there would be guys you'd want to target, but there are so many options. And it's funny, a guy who did just sign recently, and I found that funny, was Jorge Lopez, the guy who threw his glove. That's a little funny, but the Mets really, 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 in my opinion, must make the bullpen an elite strength. I do not want us to go into the trade deadline having to give up prospects, top prospects, to help a bullpen. We cannot. We need to have these elite arms in the bullpen. Really, really. I mean, if you can get them now at just the cost of money, which is supposedly our weapon, you must utilize that. Now, let's ask ourselves a couple questions. If the Dodgers were eliminated and the Dodgers weren't around, would Mets fans be satisfied with this offseason? And would the Mets fans be a little more confident about this season? I think yes, but facts are facts, and the Dodgers exist. So, therefore, if the Mets want to become that dynasty, they must defeat the Dodgers. Now, the concern of Mets fans and the concern of, I have the same concern. We are nowhere close to where the Dodgers are. The Dodgers can argue that they have a better rotation. They can argue that they have a better lineup. Bullpen, we're still both in the bullpen, building the bullpen phases, but you got a better lineup. You got a better pitching staff. I mean, that is a big, big, big advantage. Then you can argue that they have better depth. They have a better farm system. And the Mets are building their farm system. They are certainly building their farm system. But you just gotta hope Roki Sasaki signs with the Padres. That's what I gotta say right now. If the Dodgers go into next year with Ohtani, Yamamoto, Sasaki, Glass now, oh my god, and Blake Snell. So I mean, and that's not to mention they got like 5 or 6 other guys who can start. So I mean, the Dodgers, they're taking care of business. They are really methodical. You give them credit. I mean, you hear a lot of fans saying, "Is it fair? Is it bad for baseball?" And those are two different questions. Actually, they might go hand in hand, but is it fair? Well, it's not against the rules. Any team could do it. So, I mean, I can't argue it's not fair. Is it good for baseball? That's more debatable. I mean, even if the Mets were doing it, the Mets could do it. And this is what I argued in my Shohei Ohtani. Last year, I was one of the fans who wanted Ohtani. Despite the fact Ohtani apparently didn't want to come here, I said that's why you blow him out. If the Dodgers are offering $700 million, you offer him $750, $800. That extra $100 million is worth it because, first of all, we just paid $765 for Soto, right? So you can't tell me Ohtani wouldn't have been worth $800. So I could have argued that Steve Cohen had the foresight to recognize a two-way player like Ohtani who could improve your a presence and brand on the international stage. And then all that extra money you get throughout the course of the season through merchandising and international recognition. I mean, I would say it's worth it. The Mets could have been that destination. The Mets could have been that attraction. Shohei Ohtani picks the Mets. Okay, maybe Sasaki thinks twice. Maybe Yamamoto thinks twice. Ohtani, that might have been the turning point. It might have been the turning point. And I know some Mets fans are saying, but he would have never signed with the Mets. You don't know if you would have gave him an extra $100 million. How could you turn it down? And I know Ohtani's not about the money. He's making $2 million a year. Everything's deferred. But you don't know unless you try. You don't know unless you try. And Yamamoto, you offer what ended up being the same amount as the Dodgers, and of course he was going to the Dodgers. I mean, in those situations where you have control, now we don't have control with the Sasaki negotiations. In Ohtani, we had control, but at the end of the day, I'm just rehashing old sour grapes. All right, folks, let's end it off here. Those are my comments. So, what do you think about Jim Duquette? Did he take a swipe at David Stearns? Was David? I gotta say, Jim Duquette in the last couple of days, he's putting out his chest. He's coming out with the Pete Alonso story, with Scott Boras offering the Mets that 3-year exclusive contract. Now he comes out kind of knocking David Stearns. Jim Duquette, he's really he's in the spotlight the last couple of days. Not a bad thing, but a little interesting. I'm not sure I agree with that David Stearns reference because I'm going to say it again. No guy, no president, no general manager wants to hear they need their boss to get the deal done. Nobody wants to hear that. In fact, nobody working here, I'm pretty sure, that takes pride in their work wants to hear in order for them to do a good job, they need their boss, especially for a fairly simple transaction. Because this is a simple transaction, folks. This is not a complex Juan Soto, Shohei Ohtani, a generational wealth contract. This is not like that. No reason David Stearns should need his boss. I mean, and besides, they talk behind the scenes. It was almost silly that Duquette suggested that. Of course they're talking right now. He needs. It's suggesting that he needs Steve Cohen to get this done, or that this deal needs Steve Cohen is silly. Pete Alonso wants to come back to the Mets. He's tripping over to get back to the Mets. You see him in videos with Sean Manaea working out together. You hear Sean Manaea saying we want him back. You hear Sean Manaea saying that me and the polar bear, we've worked out almost every single day together. Trust me, they are great friends. Pete Alonso has a lot of friends and family or in this organization. He wants to come back specifically for this year. Next year, we will evaluate this climate next year, but there will be many other options next year. I mean, we have obviously Guerrero. That's a whole different scenario there. Then you got the Japanese sensation, first baseman. He's going to be available. He's going to be 24, 25 years old. So the Mets will have different options at first base. Plus, how's Ryan Clifford? How does he develop? How do your youngsters develop? How does Ronnie Mauricio, how does he develop? Do you want to put him at third? Do you want to put Mark Vientos at first base? In a year, you may have a whole slew of options. So you have to go year by year and see where you are next year. But right now, the best option is re-signing Pete to that short-term value contract. Call it a day. Then sign another bat, sign another starting pitcher, sign at least 2 or 3 bullpen arms, and then start the season. Go into the season, focus on the season, and evaluate your team as the season goes on. That's it. All right, folks. I'm starting to get excited. I'm starting to get pumped up. I know it is a shot that we lost Roki Sasaki, but I still have a lot of hope. I have a lot of faith, and I have a lot of confidence in my New York Mets. And that just is what it is. Again, like, subscribe. I will speak to everyone very soon. Have a great night. And again, we're doing these late night videos. It's like almost 2:00, but I love doing the videos for you.